Anytime you can get yourself into the victim position of victim, there's a big payoff. You get sympathy, you get attention, you get to be on Channel 15, you get the blubber all over, and you get $1 million lawsuit. Yeah. So the difficulty here then, people say, how can I get away from all this stuff? You can get away from it if you get the secret to it. Today is the secret. Today's the day we give secrets away with every pound of tea. Remember Pirates and Penzance? Today's the day we give babies away. No, today's the way we give babies away with every pound of tea, yeah. Today we're giving away a pound of tea with every... All right, so how do you get out of the bottom part of the pit? You see that it's the pound of tea you get out of all this stuff, folks. It isn't shame, you just love to and shame and guilt and apathy and shake all over with fear and blubber all over Channel 15 with all this tragedy. And I think Milosevic is the greatest example of pride on the planet today. I mean, he's just magnificent. No actor could do it with the, I mean, when he gets there, what is this, the International Tribunal, and he goes, you have no right to judge me. You're talking about the whole world. The whole world has no right to judge me. I mean, if that isn't the ultimate, right? Well, the juice he gets out of that is what propagates it. So, to transcend then the lower levels of the ego, it doesn't mean to go beyond all these things. It means to let go what you get out of it. You get a lot out of despising things. You get a lot out of hatred. Vindictive is what runs all these people. We love to condemn people, make them wrong, look down on them, laugh at them, spit on them, put them in prison. Get even. There you go. Getting even is the whole Middle East, isn't it? Or we can put them down with ignoring them. So it's really the willingness, and to make it coincide with the Course in Miracles, which many people here have done, is then to let go the pleasure of judgmentalism. That's how you get on it. You get off it. And you let go of the pleasure because you see it's irrelevant. You see that you're trying to get pleasure out of something that has no basis in reality. When you see that it's an arbitrary positionality, you realize that it's fake. It's fake for me to stand here and tell you that they're wrong in the Middle East. That's fake, isn't it? It has nothing to do with right and wrong. You know, it's irrelevant. It's like trying to measure water with a ruler. You know, it's just the wrong instrument. Judgmentalism is just the wrong instrument to apply to human life. Why? Because human life is coming out of an incredible complexity. The evolution of consciousness and all of its karmic expressions throughout all of time is what accounts for this piece of dust here at this moment. What can you say about that? Everything that you see is the result of the evolution of all that has ever been throughout all of time, since the beginning of time. For a piece of dust to be here, this air has to be here, the barometric pressure has to be here, this room has to be here, Sedona has to be here, it has to be Arizona, Arizona has to be in a country, all that has to be on a globe, all that has to be in a planetary system whirling around the universe. For this globe to be here at this moment, and for the light to be where it is, and the sun to be where it is, and the barometric pressure, An infinite number of things has to have evolved throughout all of time to account for this particular moment. So to be judgmental about it seems sort of inappropriate, right? We don't know what the karma of the people is in the Middle East. Maybe they should be doing that, right? Imagine what those people have done to themselves throughout many a lifetime, right? Maybe it's time they got up and killed each other. Well, 70 isn't the bottom, is it? Down here you've got apathy. Down here you've got apathy. You've got the old lady sitting there in the rocking chair. She stopped eating. She won't answer the telephone. She's lost all interest in life. She's going to die. You can see her in the nursing home. Unless you pour energy into her, she's going to die. Maybe these people are coming out of apathy. People born in Biafra and the middle countries of Europe aren't even up to 70. You realize that? Many of the babies you see there that with their stomachs all swollen up with starvation, and they're born with AIDS, you know, and they're not going to live past 3 months of age or 6 months or maybe 3 years at all. They're born at 30. Calibrated level 30. Is that right? Let's see. My guess is that what I'm looking at in my mind calibrates over 25. Calibrates 30, 35. Calibrates about 30. All right. So you think 70 is low. Millions are coming into this planet at 30. Africa is a continent that comes in at 30. You're lucky if you live to be 20 in Africa. So maybe the people that are into a furious angriness at each other and a vengeful hatred and rage are at least coming up to 70, huh? If you come up to rage and angriness, you can at least move yourself out of apathy. That's the value of television. You see all those beautiful things there on TV, all the people that are into apathy. Hey, look what those people there have, Nellie. You know, Pete, let's get one of them there toasters. Well, you got to have money for that. That means you got to go to work, right? You got to whittle some chairs and sell them something. I've been in parts of the world, up in the Andes, where the annual wage, this is back in the 70s, was 25 cents a week. There's it, 25 cents a week. And on Saturday morning, you'd see the two of them. They apparently hadn't even heard of the wheel there yet. Up in the Andes, in the 70s, I didn't even see wheels. You could see the couple trudging down the road, and they've got two sticks with a blanket between them. And they're dragging it along, and their week's produce for the week. Two squashes, 3 potatoes, and about 10 feet of rope that they'd braided by hand. And they're going to sell it Saturday morning in the market. And they take turns. One Saturday morning, she drags the stuff, and it's his day to drink. They go to market, and he gets drunk, because when they drink, they just pass out. So by noon, he's out cold. And when you see them coming back, she's dragging him. He's in the blanket. The next Saturday, they swap. The next Saturday, he drags her. By noon, they're out. 11 o'clock in the morning, they're out already. Out cold. Out cold. And they swap Saturdays. Market there is every Saturday. Not even a horse, not a wheel. They're still dragging the sticks. And the average age of death is probably 30. They all have advanced tuberculosis, malnutrition, and of course they chew coca, so they have no appetite. So they don't eat, they all have severe malnutrition, as a consequence of which they're prone to tuberculosis. So you see an old lady up there in the Andes, an old lady walk across the street, and one of the people there, I said, how old is she? He said, she's 31. 31. Looked like 61, 71, 81 even. Progeria, so you're dead already. So we put down, we say these people are evil because they're killing each other. Innocent people are getting killed. Well, innocent is a judgmental. How do you know they're innocent? Maybe all those little kids that just got blown up on the street were some horrific villains in a previous lifetime, Nazi torturers or something. So, because you don't know. All right. So the willingness then to surrender to not knowingness. So what does humility mean? Spiritual work, humility is of profound importance. It means I of myself as an ego am completely unable to comprehend reality. I have no way of knowing the truth of anything, much less can I discern its karma. Therefore, all judgment is up to God. Judgment is mine, saith the Lord. Why? Because you're not capable of it. Not capable of it. You would have to know the totality of all of existence throughout all of time up to the point of this little piece of dust right here. To explain one piece of dust, much less anything as complex as the tribal wars that have been going on in the Middle East for thousands of years and will probably continue to. Why? Because it serves that purpose. If life on earth is purgatorial, certainly not heavenly, if human life on this planet is an aspect of purgatory, then that which seems horrible to us is necessary. It's only when you've had enough suffering that you say, hey, there must be a better way. It's only because you find out this all leads you into agony that you finally give it up, right? How does the spirit hit bottom and make a choice for God instead of worshiping itself as the ego, as megalomania? Consequently, we can't even judge the purpose of human life itself, much less anything that occurs in it. Boy. We have permission to ask this question, Resist. In front of this audience, we have the purpose, we have permission to ask about the purgatorial purpose of human life, Resist. The purpose of human life as we know it on this planet is primarily purgatorial, Resist. Wow. You don't have to worry about purgatory, you're in it. Everybody worries about purgatory. It makes me laugh. God almighty. All right, so it means then that karmically we've earned the right to be in a place where we have a choice and we can determine our own destiny by the choices we make. So the absolute benevolence of divinity is that by one's own choice, one determines one's own karmic destiny. Not some arbitrary God who hates you and throws you into hell or beats you up. Most of the religions of the world believe in a God who beats you up, you know? Even bad. Boom, boom, boom. No, you get to determine it yourself. So the freedom then to realize the source of your own existence is that you have infinite freedom. That infinite freedom is there's no limits upon your choice. And that you are reborn. As the Buddha said, there's no greater thing to be grateful for. The likelihood of being born a human on this planet is extremely rare. To be born a human on this planet and to have heard of enlightenment is rarer still. Therefore, waste no time. So all of us here have accepted that awareness that we're all here, and we've accepted that we are spiritual beings and that choice is within our own hands, and that the freedom then to become more evolved is merely a choice. All right. The choice is then simplified, so we repeat how simple it is, so that we don't look like dumbbells when we leave this planet. That's how I picture God. Dumbbells. Anyway, the dumbbells. Well, all right, so it's a simple thing then. We give up the pleasure of judgmentalism, that secret little feeling of glee of you're being right and the other person being wrong. That's a hard one to let go of. It's a hard one to let go of. So the ego persists because it's addicted to the juice it gets out of its positions. Let's see if that's right. I never called it addicted before. We have permission to ask this, resist. The ego is addicted to the payoffs it gets, resist. Wow, yeah, it's addicted. Hey, we're all hooked on the ego. The ego is hooked on the juice it gets out of stuff. I mean, there's nobody juice nothing more than a victim. You see a victim on TV, oh man, they juice it for all it's worth, man. All the melodrama and the tears and the vindictiveness and how wrong they were and how right they are and how the world owes them now, and tens of millions they're going to get to. I mean, it's good luck to get played with by a Catholic priest, right? I'm saying I think I remember it myself. I just got back a repressed memory. Well, anyhow, in those days we didn't get paid for it, so it didn't happen that often. No, the ego loves this. And so what honesty, spiritual evolution requires honesty. What do we need to be honest about? Most people think, well, I need to be honest in looking at the sinful side, my negative side, my bad side. It becomes onerous. In the 12-step groups, they have a fourth step, and a lot of people would rather die than take the fourth step, because the fourth step is where you take a spiritual inventory. A strict, honest spiritual inventory. Most people hate step 4, and would rather stay drunk and die than become honest about it. It's because they think they're going to have to go through a guilt trip. So if we recontextualize it, you don't have to fear a guilt trip in admitting spiritual honesty. What you're really going to do is admit that the ego is an evolution from the animal world. It has all the characteristics of the animal world. It needed to do that for survival. Those survival techniques have now become elaborated into levels of human expression. Institutions, the government, the courts, the departments, the bureaus, all now serve the function that was once served by sneering in the wolf pack. Let's do our llamas. Here's our, we got 7 llamas. And the way the llamas do this, they're big woolly eyes, They're very interesting, the llamas. They're adorable. Llamas have such a wonderful coat of fur that in the middle of winter, it'll snow, and they got this much snow on their back. Huh? And you come back tomorrow, and the same snow is still sitting there. Hasn't even melted. The warmth of their body doesn't even get through their fur to melt the snow on their back. It's really amazing. What was I going to ask you? Oh, yes. Well, this is the way the llamas communicate. They go. It's just what they do. It's hysterical. Get to be the alpha female. Now, if this female doesn't give in to the alpha female, she spits at her. That's why they spit. They don't spit at humans unless they're not trained right. When they're real little, you don't play with them a lot because then they think you're another llama and include you in their family pack. They then treat you as a peer and will spit at you. But if you wait till they're a year or two old before you play with them, then you are not one of them. And they don't spit at you because you're not one of them. So anyway, I knew you just needed to know that, but anyway. What's interesting about watching the world, and in the animal world especially, there's so much spiritual information in watching the Animal Channel. Because you watch, you're seeing how the ego plays itself out, and it's easy to see because it's not you, it's them, you see? So society, the newspapers and the TV and all, is interesting because you see the ego displayed out there. Because it's not a personal you, it's very easy to see how it plays. You see, in your own life, it's a little harder to see how it plays because that person deserves it. That's harder to see. But on TV, projected, you can see the ego games going on. And the ego, so human life is really the game board of the ego. The ego is just a game board. And you see the llamas, what they're doing is this whole one-upmanship deal. Who's the more dominant one? And that's because they value dominance. I don't value dominance. Somebody tells me he's got a bigger car, more money, and he's governor of the state. I think that's all interesting, but I don't react to it because. So, in other words, you would have to adopt that value to be competitive about it. You understand? So, as human beings, we have choices the animal doesn't have, and we can choose whether social status is important to us or not. At a certain point of life, it's probably pathologic that it doesn't. And beyond a certain point of life, it's pathologic if it persists. If you're young and you don't care about it, you're probably in apathy. Yeah. And but then when you reach a certain point of life, such things as status and all become rather meaningless. All right, so we transcend these things by giving up the fact that they don't have any payoff anymore. Having status and a big house, a lot of money, it doesn't have any payoff. When it doesn't have any payoff, you let it go. It doesn't mean anything anymore. You can walk away from it and not really feel any loss because you've already juiced it and you see what's there and you don't need it anymore. So the secret then to transcending levels of consciousness is to just see that the ego is the residual of the animal world. It's not personal. It's built into your brain. In the back of your brain is the old reptile brain. Nothing you can do about that, folks. Wanting to kill a guy that pulls in front of you in traffic, that's normal. Any good dinosaur would chop him up and eat him. The only thing is you're not a dinosaur anymore. So anyway, yeah, it's supposed to be anyway. Some people really still are, though, actually. Those are the people who pull in front of you. They're still dinosaurs, and they deserve to die. Everybody knows that. Horrible deaths, yeah. All right. So you see, you develop a sense of humor, a lightheartedness, because you're not identifying. The value of humor is a way of disidentifying and getting distance from things. The more evolved you get spiritually, the more greater your sense of humor becomes, because everything becomes ludicrous, ridiculous, and absurd when seen from a certain viewpoint, because you're not identifying with it anymore. So the lamas out there, as they do their whole thing, are very entertaining. That's because we're not lamas. If we were lamas, we wouldn't think it's so entertaining. It'd be life or death for us, right? And it'd be life or death. All right, so getting even, being vindictive, all those things, you only persist in them so long as you're getting a payoff. So there's only one thing we have to surrender and let go, and that is the willingness to get the payoff of these various spiritual positions. If you're willing to let go of the payoff, then suddenly that which is prevails, and the reward is 10 million times greater than anything you'll ever let go of. One instant in that presence is worth all the pain and suffering of all the spiritual work you ever did. The knowingness that comes out of it, that one is safe forever, that one is, there's nothing ever to fear ever again. The reality of that which you are. If you're context, then you're immune to content, right? That sounds rather abstract, but if you, as you walk around in the world, realize that you're context and not content, then you realize you're absolute safe, because it's only as content as you're in danger at any time. The fact that the store is staying open and that you're there and Walmart's is running is not going to be changed by you and the clerk and what goes on. In other words, that which prevails continues to prevail. So you identify more with that which is prevailing than the details of it. And that takes you out of the line of fire, and instinctively you'll know it. And a lot of times you go through diuresis. In spiritual work, you find yourself building up tension and gaining weight and retaining salt. And then suddenly you reach a state of realization, and wow, you just pee up a storm for a day or two. You're like retaining all that sodium chloride. And yeah, you do. So you'll see the fluctuations in spiritual work. And just when you think you're not making any progress, that's the time to continue straight ahead. The one training that is of ultimate value is to walk straight ahead no matter what. And at the finally, this you need to know, because anybody doing spiritual work, you can reach the final doorway totally unexpected. You can be just muddling along, getting absolutely nowhere along. And one day you start doing some spiritual practice or looking at suddenly you're looking at the infinite possibility of letting go of the sense of I that you're familiar with. And at that last moment, you need the words to walk straight ahead. No matter what you run into in spiritual work, walk right through it, because it's all illusion. Any fear that you can come up with is illusory, because in reality there is no fear. Consequently, if you experience fear, that's an imagination of the ego. Therefore, there's no danger of walking through any kind of fear that arises during meditation. Anybody who does spiritual work can be confronted with that last moment right before enlightenment, where the fear of letting go, the sense of I as who I am, comes up. At that moment, you'll remember to walk through the fear, because you're absolutely safe. When you let go of all that you think you are, then you realize the truth of what you absolutely are, and you're beyond fear forever. All right, so we'll stop for lunch, and then we'll resume afterwards, and then we'll have questions. Questions and discussions later. That's enough lecturing for this morning. Well, I have all these questions, and each one takes a full afternoon, so I'll have to start. We thought maybe if people like the lectures, next year we would do them maybe 4 times during the year instead of 12, and maybe do it 10 to 2 with a continental breakfast, and then 10 to 2, and then spend the rest of the afternoon, talking more individual and greeting people and talking with them individually, if that sounds like good. But I thought the first year we should cover the entire material, sort of, you see. And those who aren't here catch up via the tapes, so we would all be at the same starting place. There's a friend of mine here, Lou. Lou, stand up. Lou is facilitating study groups all around the country. And those of you that are interested in joining a study group and an internet, say hello to Lou and give him your phone or address, your internet, whatever you do on the internet.
Or I can give you my contact information.
Yeah. I don't know how that thing works, and I don't trust it at all. But for one thing, you have to be able to type, so I forget that. So anyway, I leave it up to people to understand those things. See, the reality is that everything is happening of its own. We mentioned it before. As you concentrate more and more on the peripheral, on the space in which everything is happening instead of on the specifics of what's happening, you become detached from the yin and yang, the pull and the push of the solar plexus interaction of the world, in which everybody's trying to manipulate a response out of you. And as you identify more with the space, and as you get into the habit of that, it's like a walking meditation, and then all of a sudden you notice everything is happening of its own. Nothing is causing anything else. All is happening of its own. Everything is happening spontaneously. And everything is merely being that which it is. Nothing is causing anything. Each thing is fulfilling its potential to be what it is. That's why the bird flies. It's not caused to fly. It doesn't even have any purpose to fly. It just flies because that's what birds do. We did a lecture prior on causality, the basic illusion of the ego. You don't get really beyond causality to an extremely high level, but I think it jumps to be aware always of the space in which all is happening instead of the content of the space. It takes you sort of out of it, gets you out of that solar plexus, yin-yang, the grasp of the world, which is always trying to manipulate your emotions, and usually it's through the solar plexus, you know. Although they appeal to the spleen a lot too, you know, feel sorry for me and get even with them and all that. All right, so we'll let that be for whatever that is. This is, I get asked this often. A pendulum is very often a very adequate substitute. Thing about a pendulum is I don't think you should douse things that are negative, extremely negative. You can ask yes or no. You're just asking yourself yes or no. There's a specific from the Course in Miracles. That the human body is an indication of the belief in separation from God. Well, yes and no. Yes, it is. As I said, the body evolves as it belongs to the planet. It is part of the physical universe. The body is an evolution of the animal world. And the self, the small self, identifies with it as being separate. Did the small self think it was separate before it identified with the body? Well, yes, it would have. Otherwise, it wouldn't have chosen a body. I mean, to say no to my father and reactivate the body was taking that chance that when you re-identify with the physicality that you'll believe you're separate from the one. That's the risk in doing that, and generally it's not advisable. What actually happens when people worldwide pray for peace? Well, that was, the harmonic convergence. I said the consciousness level jumped from 190 to 207 in the late 80s. That was the time. It coincided with the harmonic convergence, which coincided with the time when a great many, a high percentage of the spiritually evolved people on the planet all prayed for peace simultaneously. We all got up at 4 in the morning or something. I forget what it was. Yeah, I think it was 4 in the morning or something. And that jump occurred about that same time. Now, as I said, causality is an illusion of the ego. So you can't say that all those people praying for peace caused it to jump to 207, nor that the harmonic convergence caused it to happen, or any particular alignment of the planets caused it to happen. No, it's more that something outside of all these events simultaneously brought them all into existence. So it has to do more with advanced theoretical physics, understanding that the spinning electron on this side of the universe doesn't cause the one on the other side of the universe to spin. That which is outside both of them but encompasses both of them is simultaneously. So people ask me about astrology, and the alignment of the planets, of course, is a perceptual illusion. There's no alignment of the planets, it's all in your head. If you go up there in a spaceship, you're not going to see any Pegasus up there. There ain't no such animal. But it can be that at that which brings on a state of peace, in other words, the two are happening simultaneously. It's not that the alignment of the planets is causing this, but that which is concordant. The blooming of flowers is concordant with the spring, you know what I'm saying? Let's ask about the I've never actually asked about it. I just had my own understanding about it. We can ask questions about this. Resist. Okay. The intention, the conjoined intention did play a part in raising the consciousness in the late 80s, resist. Oh, it did. Okay. It did. So we have quite a diversity of questions here. In the book Eye of the Eye, it says, I mentioned that the book of Revelations is an aberration in the New Testament. Things that I warned as a caveat in the beginning of the book. It says traditional religionists may be disturbed by this, and then they're better read something else. The evolution of religion, you see, came out of primitive, all of life came out of a primitive condition. And primitive man, when he heard thunder and lightning, as he evolved, began to think it was the angry gods. And so we see the Incas sacrificing virgins. We see the ancient tribes of Israel. We see primitive man considering God from an anthropomorphic position. And why wouldn't he? So we can't make man wrong for doing that. If you're a primitive man and it thunders and lightnings and all, you figure the gods must be angry. So you sacrifice a few more virgins and to pacify the gods. And this is done. Ancient Hebrews did it, sacrificing lambs to the what's called behind the curtain and all that things. So the anthropomorphic images of God, of course, were common. They're projections from the unconscious. They're also projections of the concept of causality. Of course, what man forgets is that all these catastrophes and floods and volcanoes and hail and all that went on long before mankind appeared on this planet. We've only been here 400,000 years. Well, for millions of years, all this has been going on. So obviously, it's not done by an angry God to get even with man, because man wasn't even here yet. Okay. So the primitive belief then is that it projects its fears onto a divinity, and then imagines that they will have to meet this divinity, which is a projection of their own unconscious. So every culture has it. We get the Lord of the underworld, weighing your sins, etc. Every culture has its primitive origins. Some persist. Some tribal belief systems still persist and are revered. Others, paradoxically, are quite evolved. Native American traditional beliefs were quite evolved. Chief Detroit calibrates at 700. He gave a very famous address, which is of a very high level of spiritual understanding. So the great white spirit of the Native American was already considerably more evolved than many supposedly more advanced civilizations. The American Indian saw the divinity of all of life. That's why it prays and asks the deer for forgiveness that I have to eat you for dinner. Well, the deer doesn't mind. The purpose of the deer's life is to give life back to the Indian. So there's a mutuality. So some seemingly primitive tribes had pretty advanced consciousness and understanding that the divine spirit is present in all that lives. Is a pretty advanced state of awareness. The difficulty with Christianity considerably has been the decision to include the Old Testament with the New. Well, the Old Testament is full of all the tribal anthropomorphic projections of God as an angry, vengeful, jealous, insecure, paranoid. And there's only 3 books of the Old Testament that make you go strong with kinesiology: Psalms, Proverbs, and huh? Yeah, right. Proverbs is in the 300s, and I like Proverbs. It's full of really pithy sayings, sort of like Ben Franklin, you know. Yeah, I like Proverbs. Psalms, of course, is beautiful and poetic and mystical and lovely. And Genesis comes forth with the first statement of that which man really needs to know, and that is that you're created by God. The importance of that statement surpasses everything. Why it was included with the New Testament is beyond me, but anyway, historical reasons being what they are. The difficulty with Revelations is John, who was the source of Revelations, had those are lower astral hallucinations. If you calibrate the Revelations, it comes out at 70. 70 is the spleen. 70 is coming from the lower astral. So when we said this morning there's an infinite universe of universes, these universes have different dimensions. The higher and lower astrals are the most commonly known to man, because man has contacted those domains through hallucinations, say hallucinogenic drugs, nightmares, delusions. So mankind has been able to contact the higher astral, where there's divas and beautiful channelers of sort of angelic level and rather evolved beings. And then, of course, the dimensions in the astral go down the same as they do here. And so you have the lower astral realms of the demons and the devils and various no-goods. A lot of these entities in the lower astral like to hook humans. Now, what is the lower astral made up of? The lower astral is made up of those who deny God. No, not deny God. Those who refuse God. Because you can be a truthful atheist and agnostic and say, I just really don't know. That's not refusing God. That's saying, honestly, because of the limitation of my intellect and my personal experience, I cannot get into the question one way or the other meaningfully, and therefore, honestly, I decline it. I was an agnostic for many years. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So the lower astral, however, is made up of people who have had the opportunity and the capacity to accept God, but have refused it. Refused God. Okay, let's make sure if that's correct. The lower astral, we have permission to ask in front of this audience today and here and now. Resist. The lower astral is made up of those who refuse God. Resist. It is not the same as those who deny God. Resist. Those who deny God can still go to good places. Resist. There's hope for everybody. There's an honest man's level of heaven where all good atheists and agnostics go. Well, we all know people who are ethical, principled, and you trust them with your bank account, but when it comes to the religion and all that, they say, I don't know, I just can't handle it. I got a patient like that, and he's getting older and older, and he knows he's going to die, and he says, Doc, I just wish I could believe the way you believe, but I don't know. I was brought up by the Catholic Church, and somehow I just can't get over it. I said, well, you got to forgive it. forgive your upbringing because it wasn't really the Catholic Church. It's the way man held religion back in the 20s and the 30s. You know, we all grew up with one of the reliefs of becoming an atheist or an agnostic, whatever I was. I think I was first an atheist, and then I got more sophisticated and became agnostic. Was the great relief of fear and guilt about sin, you know? And sin was a spot on your soul, my mother would say, and if you sin, you get this spot on your soul. Oh my God, and then if you went to communion with this spot on your soul, God knows what happens to you. It's too awful to imagine. You know? All right, so the lower astral is very common in Sedona. There's channelers all over, from all kinds of dimensions on the other side. God bless them. There's Baba this and Baba that on the other side, and all kinds of controllers and trance mediums, and it's something I warn about in the books I write. As a teacher, it's my responsibility to advise people of the various pitfalls, because many spiritual seekers, you know, are enthused and very naive, and a lot of it sounds very glamorous and entrancing. I went to get a psychic reading, and he told me about my grandmother's false teeth, and how could he have known? He must have known. And I mean, you know, it's very impressive when you walk into it. And of course, there are some people who are very intuitive, and they do guess quite a few things right. However, they've been very wrong, I'll tell you too. One time, trance medium says, your grandmother says you should eat more greens or you'll get arthritis. It could have been, you know. You need to know the calibrated level of what's on the other side, and you need to know the calibrated level of what's on this side, the trance medium and the source. There's a glamour and a trap in it all. In that the lower astral is, you see, one of the benefits of being a human is that the human has the choice of returning to God. The lower astral, by having refused it, does not have the choice. So the lower astral hates the human because the human has no glass ceiling, no top side, and is not condemned to the hells that they exist in. So one thing a lower astral loves is to get a naive spiritual seeker, especially one who's making good progress, and get control over them and lead them astray. The delight is that of mischief. Little devils love to pull somebody off the pathway and watch them go and sit out in their car in the middle of the desert waiting for the, what you call it, some other planets to come and pick them up. What do you call those people from other planets? Aliens, yes. Sitting out in the desert waiting for the aliens to come and get you. I mean, good God. I mean, you know, it happens every day. And so the naive are pulled in. I had a teacher who said, never trust anything unless it's in a body. In other words, unless you can see who you're talking to, or their writings, let's say, but somebody who either does or has existed in human form. Because you have no idea what you're dealing with, and other universes are extremely complex, subtle, and ingenious. Spiritual deception is a long and honored tradition in India. They've been at it for thousands of years before you were even thought of. They were expert at it in those years, and they are expert in it today. It's a tradition. All kinds of manipulations of seemingly magical and wondrous events. Huh? Oh no. The spiritual seeker is best to stay with that which is safe, that which is calibrates over 200. For instance, the Course in Miracles calibrates at 600. All right, 600 is a pretty pure pathway to follow. So if you know the calibrated level of that which you're following, you avoid the lower astral. The lower astral hates that which is, you might say, hates love and hates divinity. And it seeks to subvert truth. So the lower astral influences are what convince Islamics to think that killing people for Allah will get them to heaven. I mean, it's an obvious, severe distortion. And yet, if you get people young enough and small enough and begin brainwashing them with this belief, they will believe it by the time they grow up. You know, Goebbels, Nazi Germany did it with the German youth. They didn't know any different, didn't know any better. And so it seems to me that Revelations was a way in which the lower astral got into the New Testament, which was a huge threat to it. The New Testament, especially if you read the translation from the Aramaic rather than from the Greek, calibrates extremely high if you take out Revelations. Take out Revelations, it calibrates extremely high, and it has extreme power. So, to sort of disable it to some degree, that which is its opposite was placed right in the middle. And you'll notice that the extreme right wing of Christianity plays off Revelations. That's it's you know, when it shakes its fist with hatred of the sinner and death and hellfire, that all plays out of the Revelations, So that particular wing of Christianity would feel threatened if you diminish the validity of Revelations. Yeah, you understand? Because that's their whole ministry is based on that. This whole ministry is based on hatred and the hatred of sin. Well, it sounds very pious to hate sin, except that hatred is hatred, isn't it? To hate a bad man is the same as hating a good man. I mean, what holds you down is the hatred itself. So to hate sin is really not a very cool place to be. Anyway, the visions that John had, John himself calibrated at 70, just like the book of Revelations calibrates at 70. The vision that John had is a lower astral reality. It was related to me by a very well-known teacher in Sedona who was in that place, saw what was going to happen. He brought gathered all his followers. They prepared for the end times and all that. So the end times was, let's see, when was that? Maybe the late 70s, 80s. The end times had a great big play again with all the psychics. Everybody who got a reading heard about the end times and how New York was going to crack down 14th Street. There was a big fault under 14th Street, right under the best German restaurant in New York City, on 14th Street. California was going to fall off in the ocean. Phoenix was going to become a seaport. Remember all that? People were building underground houses and dome houses. And, so that was an hysteria that spread. And so that kind of teaching, how to tell that teaching right off the bat without calibrating it is simple. That which comes from God brings peace. And anything that brings anything other than peace and love is not of God. That is the rule of discernment. So you don't have to calibrate everything because perceptual, as the third eye of the Buddhic body opens up, one perceives that which is of God and that which is not of God, you see? And that which is not of God becomes an absurdity. But there were all kinds of people. They're still practicing in Sedona, by the way. I see their name. Somebody gave me a list of their names off the internet. So the same creatures that were predicting the California falling off in the ocean and God knows what all the little people from other planets coming to get us and all are still practicing. They didn't go out. So when they predicted the end of the world came and the world didn't come to an end, they just changed the story. It's not going to be 87, it's going to be 93. And 93 came and went. Yeah. All right, so lots of people have tuned in on that lower astral thing, seeing the end of the world, the great apocalypse and all. And on that astral level, it is a reality. On that level, it is a reality. Okay, let's see. The level, which was perceived by John, is a reality. On the lower astral level, resist. It is a reality on this planet, resist. Sorry, wrong universe. Okay. It is the truth, but not for this planet, folks. So we said this morning, there are many dimensions in what's true in one dimension. You see, there's movies going on in each dimension, and their movie is not our movie, but was seen by those people. Now, the person that told me that out here in Sedona was a well-known teacher, and he literally believed it because he experienced it. And I'm sure John, who gave us revelations, it was a literal experience. All right. There are many mental disorders due to a genetic problem. All mental disorders are due to brain chemistry on the operational level. A third of the planet has an insufficiency of serotonin, not enough serotonin in their brain, that essential neurotransmitter, to keep them out of depression, addiction, gambling, sex addiction, pedophilia, whatever. There's not enough serotonin, and they go into depression. Depression is the most prevalent and largest illness in the United States. 1/3 of the population is subject to depression. And I believe operationally the best thing to do with it is like you wear glasses if you're nearsighted. You just take something that raises the serotonin because you're making up for a genetic defect. All right, I'm sure it has karmic antecedents as well. So I tell people in the office, do what you can to raise the neurotransmitter and do what you can to evolve as far as you can spiritually. Also, we're not talking about karma today, but karmic research will almost always take you back to the lifetime that precipitated the depression in this lifetime. The penance that you're paying now for what you said or did in that lifetime. One can also go into the lower astral through psychic events, drugs, LSD. The so-called bad trip is nothing but a trip in the lower astral. Nightmares, hallucinations, imaginations. So one can plunge unwittingly into lower astral. Nightmares are probably the commonest ones. One can have difficulty with other neurotransmitters in the brain. The normal brain, see, there's an infinite number of transmissions going on psychically, as well as electronically and otherwise, in an infinite multitude of universes. So the brain wouldn't know what in the world to pick up. Yeah. When I was young, radio was new. Radio was a novelty, like the internet and the internet is now. It was a novelty. I remember when we got a radio. In fact, we didn't have a radio, so I made one, a crystal radio. And we wound the coils ourselves and all did all that. We had a cat's whisker that you poked around till you got a station. Oh, God. But you had to afford earphones, which I didn't have the money for earphones, so I'd have to buy earphones to play with this thing. But anyway, what your radio does is has limiter circuits. The radio, you look at your station dial on the radio, the old-fashioned radio, AMs, it has limiting circuits. Otherwise, every time you turn your radio on, you're going to get about 8 stations at once, 8 stations coming in at once. So these limiting circuits are to screen out other frequencies. Well, there are certain kinds of mental disorders where that neurotransmitter that energizes that system to keep out other frequencies is missing or deficient, or due to some life event, it gets diminished. And I'm sure there's some karmic propensity, and the people will literally experience one of the levels of hell. So I always tell people if such a thing should occur to you, just presume that it, just take my say-so. In some other lifetime, you curse somebody to hell, and that karma is coming back. And therefore, here's what I would do. If you get into a hellish state, start praying up a storm and say, Dear God, in that lifetime, I did not realize what I was doing when I cursed somebody to hell, and I asked for forgiveness, and I asked that person's forgiveness, and I forgive myself for that ignorance. And because, in a way, one can bring hell upon oneself by cursing another to hell, so, right? So you simultaneously undo the karma the best you can. You try to undo whatever you might have done. Whenever anything negative befalls you, it's always very practical to presume it's some kind of karma coming back. If you treat it as though it's some karma from a previous lifetime, you don't have to literally know it. Just guess that's likely so. And do what you can to undo that via forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving the other person. Below level 600, it's not likely that a person is going to remember a past lifetime. I never asked that question, whether people actually remember the past lifetime. Well, I guess they do. People under 600 do remember past lifetimes resist. Yeah, especially infants resist. Yeah, especially children. Yeah, people do remember that. But let's say something befalls you in this lifetime, you may not recall, what went on in some lifetime. But you're in pretty good grounds to presume that is the likelihood, and handle it as though that is what occurred. Yeah. Things occurred because of such complex conditions. Now, we said nothing causes anything else. So, an event here, you might say, precipitates a climate, and that climate is what interacts with that which you are to precipitate a certain event. You understand that it's not causing it. It's a favorable condition in which that can come forth. Many things that you think is a calamity is something that actually, due to your spiritual commitment, you've brought back because of your wish to undo it. I went through surgery for a hernia without anesthesia. It was excruciating. And I remembered exactly what I'd done. I was reliving exactly what I'd done. In that war, with a sword, I'd gored this guy through the groin. And that wasn't the error. He was down and out. The error was I didn't finish him off. The guilt of that lasted to this lifetime. Out of true compassion, I would have finished it for him so he didn't have to die a slow, lingering death of infection and days and weeks of agonizing pain before he went. But I didn't. I lacked the moral courage to do the honest thing. In another lifetime, I didn't make that mistake. He and I killed each other at the same time. I told you about him. Anyway. So the undoing, then, the forgiveness of that, the guilt of that brought back the opportunity to re-experience and to forgive myself, because the guilt of that, to a warrior's conscience, not to another person's conscience, but to the consciousness of a warrior, that was a cowardly thing to do. And the cowardice of not killing him off, that lasted all those lifetimes. It wasn't that many lifetimes ago, but anyway. So you just got me talking about karma here. Sorry, we started off on Revelation and ended up... I already told you about the Mohammed and the Islam guy that he and I got into it during the Crusades and killed each other at the same time, you know. Yeah, I killed him for Jesus and he killed me for Allah. And at the same time, we were good. And I got him right through the heart and he killed me dead in the mackerel. And we went out of body and both started, it was hysterical laughing, you know. He said, I did it for Jesus. He said, I did it for Allah. We just broke us up, you know. It was hysterical. We've been great pals for many a lifetime. Okay. What is the most direct path to the conscious level 500? Well, we did it this morning. The willingness to let go the payoffs of the ego, the gratifications, the feeling of justification, the willingness to feel victorious at another person's expense. What you have to remind yourself is, although what you're getting out of this ego position has a certain pleasure, it is not happiness. You get pleasure out of turning the knife in somebody's back, but you don't get happiness out of it. So if you let go the pleasure of revenge, let's say, what you get is the happiness of being a freer, more loving, and therefore self-loving spirit. So there is an enormous payoff. You get back far more than you let go of. This asks, how can you avoid getting false answers in the kinesiology process? I explained it before. It's your intention. You see, I would have to go back and explain the physics of kinesiology. Now, physics of kinesiology has to do with the fact that consciousness recognizes that which is, and it does not recognize that which is not. Therefore, that which is false, because it is not, gets no response. The intentions of the two people. When you do kinesiology, it's best to not care one way or the other about the answer, and you won't always get the answer that pleases you or the answer that you think you'll get. The answer you get is irrespective of the test subject, and it's really irrespective of your own belief system, because we've tested it over many times. I've done it on videotapes, which many of you probably have home, in which we test things out which are completely the opposite of what everybody believes, and we still get the correct answer. And we've done it, in front of large populations, and it's been done by thousands of practitioners for many years. I remember it was done in Korea, in which we held up two apples, there was two packages of cabbage, right? Somebody gave us a package of cabbage. I held it up, and we're all ones and twos, Made everybody go strong. And we held up the other cabbage and made everybody go weak. I didn't know what it was. She said, well, this one's got pesticide and this one doesn't, see? So it's irrespective of your belief system. The best test subjects are children. And I think in Power versus Force Volume 1 video, we test organic tobacco versus commercial tobacco, and we test a picture of Hitler in a brown envelope and all. We used a little child, and of course the answers were all correct. How is discernment different than judgment? Well, spiritual discernment is the opening of the third eye. It's one of the gifts of the Spirit. And it has nothing to do with judgment. Discernment is noticing whether it's a rainy day or a sunny day, and it's not a moral, judgmental matter. Judgment is bringing in an additional dimension of ethics, morality, spiritual belief systems, etc. In dealing with the so-called New Age community and all of its attractions, it's a carnival. It has many attractions. Discernment is considerable. Usually judgment is not involved because many of these people who have all these various practices, themselves believe in it. I mean, they're not at the Kanya, but because they themselves are part of the cadre that have been caught into the belief system themselves. There's one currently on the internet about a local spiritual group, and with a description of how this group operates. It was right out of the book I'd written on how to recognize a cult. It was like right out of the, and the leader of this group gets messages from the other side. He's got, I don't know, they always call him Michael or Baba something or other. Anyway, so his spirit on the other side. So this guy goes and writes up 4 fallacious statements and goes to this guy who consults his spirit guide. His spirit guide gives him a reading on these 4 questions. All of them are fallacious. About the spirit of his 4-year-old daughter. He never had a 4-year-old daughter. Went with his first wife. He never was married before. All 4 were totally fallacious, and yet he got an elaborate reading on each and every one of them. You know what I'm saying? What are the names of individuals who currently calibrate over 700? Currently living? I guess that means living. I really don't know. I don't know any people over 700. I don't know what people will calibrate at, so I wouldn't know if they calibrate over 700. I wouldn't know the names of them. What we've asked is how many. See, we're trying to get the distribution of the levels of consciousness on the planet, how it plays out. So we were asking that mainly to see how the levels play out. And I don't know who they would be. All I know is that there's approximate numbers, but we can ask about it. There's a graph here that shows it somehow. Well, this is generally sort of the graph, which of course will get upside down, right? Okay. And backwards. All right. Upside down and backwards, yes. All right, so there's not too many, as you can see. It's just statistically. So we asked how many people are there. It has changed, by the way. First of all, this change was the number of people who calibrate over 200 since 1995 has shifted. The number of people below 200 is now only 78%. It was like 85%. 7% of the population, since we first wrote the book, has shifted from the negative to the positive range. The number of people over 600 has also increased. Let's see, I forgot what I wrote now. It probably changes. We have permission to ask, I guess we should ask over, what does this say, over 700? Over 700, there's more than 50 people resist. There's more than 30 people resist. There's more than 20 people resist. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. All right, so at this moment, it says there's 29 people on the planet over 700. Huh? What are their names? I probably can't pronounce them. Let's see. Let's ask, because I revise this every couple of years. Because of a new book, I have to revise the figures. We have permission. How many did we say? Somebody write this down, because I won't remember later. Okay, over 800. We have permission to ask that. Resist. Over 800, there's more than 12. There's more than 7, more than 8, more than 9, more than 10, more than 11, more than 12. 11? 11. I don't know what figures we got at home. Over 800, there's 11 beings resist. 12 beings resist. So, okay, somebody's writing this down? Okay. Because I won't remember it. All right, over 900, there's more than 6, 7, 6. Currently, there's 6 over 900 resist. There's 7 resist. There's 6 over 900. That's pretty good. One time, I think there was only 1. Okay. We'll go up to 950. Let's see. What did we say? 6? Okay.
Do we ask permission?
Okay. We have permission to ask this resist. In front of this audience here and now, resist.
That's a no.
Okay. We went up to 800.
Right.
We asked the number over 700. That was correct, resist. That was permissible, resist. The number over 800 was permissible, resist. The number over 900 is permissible, resist. The number over 950 is permissible, resist. No. Anyway, that's what it says. The importance of it was that the positivity of the higher few counterbalances the total negativity of the masses. That was the point of it, that it counterbalances it. All right. In the sense of the silence, the sense of oneness is one and the same thing. The silence, the self, that which you are, all of existence, is a totality of which there is no witness. The witness and that which is witnessed are one and the same. There isn't a this witnessing of that. Because there is no this and that, there is only that which is. There would have to be a this witnessing of that, which is not the way it works. Here's one about serotonin deficiency. Yes, that's 1/3 of the. Do I recommend antidepressants? Yes, I think so. I don't see any point to suffer needlessly. And if you get out of the depression, then you can go back to establishing a life that is as supportive as you can. And depressions are periodic. They come on cyclically. They come on for many reasons unknown. Many of them are temporary, and some are biological. Bipolar disorder, there's a genetic factor. And the depression will just recur of its own under the best of circumstances. So because it's like diabetes for which you take insulin, or migraine headaches for which you take Imitrex, there's no point to lie on the bed all day with a migraine when there's now some medications that will cure it within an hour. There's no point to suffering. Because a person who's spiritually committed, all their intentions, because of the spiritual intention of the spiritual will, All that occurs can be made to serve one's spiritual intention. All suffering, all seeming misfortune has a coloration, an aspect, a significance if it contextualized in a certain way. It can be made to serve one's spiritual purpose. Can a person evolve up the scale of consciousness without experiencing the lower level of it? Well, I don't know. Can you be a human being without once having been a worm? I don't know. It isn't that the person so much evolves, it's that consciousness evolves. So that consciousness at this level would choose this kind of animal or body or plant or wherever that consciousness is at that time. We did an interesting thing. We'll confirm this also for the fun of it. We have permission to ask about the spirit entering the fetus resist. The human spirit enters the fetus before the first month resist, before the second month resist, before the third month resist. The human spirit enters the embryo after the third month resist. Human spirit. So the embryo is a potential home for the human spirit. But it's not till the third month that it actually chooses to energize and join with that embryo. So it could be that one more or less chooses an incarnation that's consistent with one's level of consciousness. Had the body been that of a worm there in the snowbank, I probably would not have gone back in it even if my father was there. It just wouldn't have been suitable, you know what I mean? Mantra is a different meditation. You know, we'll talk about meditations, techniques later on in the courses. Mantra is a very specific thing. Many times it's the teaching of a very specific school in which the consciousness level of the school itself plays a part. The consciousness level of the teacher plays a part. We recently did one, we calibrated the level that was of a Sanskrit classic translated by, I think, Satchidananda. Yeah. All right, that certainly would sound legitimate, right? Okay. And in there, I know, the teachings of Patanjali. All right, the teachings of the Sutras of Patanjali. All right. So in there, it suggests a mantra. We have permission to do this, resist. All right. The mantra, Om, calibrates over 500, Om, over 600, Om, over 700, Om, over 740, Om, about 700, Om, about 700. All right, but the way it was written in this translation from the Sutras of Patanjali was Aum. Okay. Aum calibrates over 200 resist. So whether you're going Aum all day or going Om all day, means you go to heaven or hell, folks. I hate to tell you, you get the wrong book. It's curtains. All right, so I would test out the level of mantra. There are many mantras that make you go weak. Test out the level. See, You would say, well, you see how you instantly get blinded? Well, the sutras of Patanjali. Amen, right? Translated by Satchidananda. Amen. It's got to be the absolute truth. No, don't trust it. I don't care if it's Satchidananda. I don't care who wrote it. I don't care if his beard goes across the room. Doesn't mean anything. You got to have bald head and a beard that goes across the room, robes and incense going, and the sound of in the background, and then the great Baba Bojum comes forth, and smoke shoots out of his ears, and the miraculous occurs. Right. India's full of it. After studying at so-and-so's ashram for 3 years, they come back from India, and mainly they've got amoebic dysentery. The TM meditation, those of us who've done TM, we were given a private mantra. I never investigated it. I don't suppose there's something I could really ask. The TM mantra that I was given, I have permission to ask.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. I have permission to ask it, resist. The TM mantra I was given is over 200 resist. It was over 300 resist. 350, 390. Anyway, it was over 200, so. Well, let's see. You see, a thing doesn't have to calibrate at 800 to be worth studying, because things are not useful except at your own level. If you're worrying about how to forgive your mother-in-law, reading something by Krishna, you know, the Bhagavad Gita is not going to help you much. Krishna says, I'm the supreme being, the ultimate reality of all. Does that help you with your mother-in-law? Not much. Might do a lot better to pick a spiritual program that calibrates around 300 and tells you how to get off personalizing other people's problems. You might do better going to an Al-Anon group or, you know, because, so just a calibration doesn't mean anything except that it's pertinent to that level. You know, I think I've told you in a previous lecture, when I was born, or when I was born into this body, I was 3, the body was 3. And suddenly out of the void, the nothingness of the Jnana voidness, which I believed was the ultimate truth from those lifetimes, and suddenly there was a stunning awareness of existence as existence. I was conscious that I existed. Instantly came the fear of non-existence. First of all, I wasn't happy to exist in the first place. To be in a body again was not a delight. To be alive as a human being was not a pleasure at all. I was not happy with existence. But even though I wasn't happy with existence as a physical human being, the fear of non-existence then came up. Well, the duality of existence, of the self, the reality of the self as existence versus non-existence, is not a problem till you get to 840. That's a problem that doesn't arise till about level 840. Yeah. It's not a problem till 840, so you really don't have to study how to transcend existence versus non-existence until you get there, any more than you need a map to Cincinnati when you're not even Ohio yet. So, I think one should look, what are the kind of problems I'm having right now? And then, of course, most people in spiritual work are aware, have met and mingled with others. If you're having trouble forgiving your mother-in-law, then what you really need is the Course in Miracles, right? You don't really need the Sutras of Patanjali. All spiritual work is beneficial because of the intention behind it, because of the intention. It's the intention that sets the calibrated level. So when you seek out a spiritual practice, teaching group, and many of us, as we evolve, go through a number of groups. We've checked out Reiki, we've checked out the Boy Scouts, the Course in Miracles, all of them. We've checked them all out, and each one of them has had a value, but it's not designed to take you all the way to enlightenment. However, you can't get to the top floor without walking the stairs, right? So you can't get from the second floor to the fourth floor without going through the third floor. So each spiritual practice and teaching has its own intrinsic value and beauty. Intrinsic value and beauty. Even though I became an atheist later on, as a child, I was brought up high Episcopal, and it was in a cathedral, and it was gorgeous. Stained glass windows, incredible architecture. In later life, when I tour Europe, I go from cathedral to cathedral. I go from Cologne to Reims to... My interest in Europe is the cathedrals, because it is the greatest creative work of man, it's artistic work of man. Huh? It combines the incredible architecture, incredible beauty, incredible commitment and work, incredible frescoes and paintings, carvings. You can look at a carving that a man spent his entire lifetime carving that pulpit, one entire lifetime, everything in third and fourth dimension. Magnificent. And then, of course, the incense over the couple hundred years embeds itself in the wood. And then, of course, you have the pageantry of the parade of the bishop and the mitre and the incense. And I was the bishop's boat boy, and he would incense I was going to say the audience, the parishioners. And I was the little guy with the long coat on. I held up the incense, and he would put it over the charcoal. So those things were inspirational. You might say it reinforces a love of beauty. And one part of spiritual practice, I think, is an increasing sensitivity to beauty. And certainly by the time you get to the high 500s, the beauty is stunning. In fact, it is incapacitating. You can, of course, get incapacitated along the way. The high 500s is one place you get incapacitated. As you get up around 5'8" or 5'90", the stunning beauty of the world makes you cry all the time. You can turn a corner, and there is just the beauty of it just knocks you out, and you're really not too functional in the world. And a lot of people come out to Sedona in that level. You just can't function in the world anymore. Or a couple look at each other, you're in the airport, and this couple look at each other, and you can see the love between them. And just the sight of that love just knocks you out. You're just overwhelmed. So that's the level of the high 500s, which is approaching bliss. And your sensitivity to beauty, you can see beauty in everything. And I say the easiest place to see beauty is the Kleenex box. And you pull the Kleenex box half out, and you see it's like a painting by George O'Keeffe. If you really see the beauty of the Kleenex box, you see its incredible beauty. It stands there, see, because you're beyond form now, and what you're seeing is the intrinsic beauty and perfection of all of creation. Every Kleenex box is an opportunity to see God. That's the truth. And at the very high 500s, and I can remember walking down alleys, and I was just struck by the beauty of it. It was like a surrealistic, no, an impressionistic painting. And the garbage can is all lumped over like that. And it's like a piece of sculpture, you see? All the world turns into a beautiful sculpture. Everything you look at is, you can see the perfection and the intrinsic beauty of existence. All that exists has an intrinsic, incredible beauty. The capacity to see it, then, is like a gift, a spiritual gift, as you go maybe around 560, 570. The incredible beauty of everything knocks you out, and that makes it very hard to function in the world. It does. And I remember in New York City looking down this, what the world would call a disgusting, filthy alley, probably full of dead cats and rats and googies. And it was just like an incredible French impressionistic painting. Everything stands there. There's a movie, The Red Shoes Ballet, which was done many, many years ago. I think the Sadler-Wells Ballet played the ballet. And in there, I think there's a street scene, and the newspaper is blowing down the street. And as the wind blows it down this dusty street, you see this newspaper doing a dance all of its own, and it's just intriguing and entrancing. Called the Red Shoes Ballet. It was made in Europe. I don't know if it's available in the video stores, probably not, but the famous ballerina of the Sadler-Wells in those days played the lead part in the Swan Lake Ballet, which was incredible. And so the increasing attraction of beauty, the ability to see beauty in all that exists, is part of spiritual evolution, I think. That's enough questions. Anybody have any more questions? Any more questions?
Can you talk about the Holy Spirit? You mentioned it in your book. Are you talking about what A Course in Miracles talks about?
My understanding of it, yeah. Classically, God is described as being transcendent or immanent. The experience of God within is the pathway of enlightenment. Religion is traditionally devoted to the experience of God transcendent, in which case God gets displaced in time. The traditional religionist believes that God set up the universe, and like a bunch of billiard balls has been running itself ever since. You live a lifetime, and then you go to heaven. So in the meantime, so God started the universe, took off, and is waiting for you in heaven. Hopefully you've led a good life in which it will be a pleasant encounter. Otherwise, God help you. The presence of God within is the province of the mystic. The traditional religion is a very interesting paradox, because it is the presence of God within. It was the mystic that is the source of all the world's religions, who then claim that the only valid God is a transcendent one. Other than Christianity, where Christ says that heaven is within you. In the Muslim world, you see, Muhammad calibrates at 700. And in the Muslim world, the enlightenment of the mystic is considered a heresy to claim. It's considered to be a claim. Well, to the unenlightened person, such a statement seems like a claim, but the person to whom that's a reality, it has nothing to do with the claim. There is nothing to claim and no one claiming it, because it is ordinary reality. It's ordinary reality, you know? Just as a big, strong man can pick up 100 pounds like it's nothing, and that's just normal to him. That's not an exceptional thing. That's not an accomplishment. That's not something that he looks to the world for a claim for. It's just that he's born that way, and he is that way, and he can pick up 100 pounds like it's nothing. He was a big ball basketball player. I read that he was 350 pounds and 6'8". I thought, my God. He's got a French-sounding name. Chatil or Chanel or... Huh? Anyway, I don't know, he's 7 feet tall and he weighs 380 pounds or something. He could probably just lift this thing up like it was nothing, you know what I mean? My eyes would bulge. So, to a person whose eyes would bulge trying to lift this up, it would seem like an incredible accomplishment. To him, it would be a snap, you understand? So, the reality of the mystic is only the way it is to the mystic. It is nothing particularly unusual or important. When it comes on, it knocks you out. Yes, when it starts. But after, as the years go by and you learn how to live with it, it's just ordinary. It's just ordinary. The Holy Spirit then is the expression of God within as it becomes known. You might say, I look at the Holy Spirit as the connection between the infinite, non-linear, and the linear. It's like the connection between the infinite non-linear. What is the connection between form and non-form? Within all form is non-form, yeah? We said that from a scientific viewpoint, the quantum potentiality is the space. Ah, there we got the Holy Spirit and the quantum potentiality. We know the Holy Spirit hears about this. That's where it's at. By God, that's where it's at. Just discovered it a few weeks ago. I was writing something. I said, God, that's the quantum potentiality, man. Oof. Where the infinite potentiality of the manifest contacts the manifest and influences it. Huh? I was saying the Holy Spirit is in that 1/10,000th of a second between two thoughts that the Buddha talked about. I remember when I first read that, that was so frustrating. I was really mad. I tried meditating and finding 1/10 of a second between two thoughts, and you can't do it. Like trying to chase a dog chasing his tail. The harder you try to create a space between two thoughts, the more impossible it becomes. And yet the Buddha said that's where you glimpse eternity. And it is a fact. It is a fact. And in that instant, the Holy Spirit takes advantage of that space and it leaps in with that knowingness. So the presence of God as it expresses through the Purusha, the Sanskrit, which for the presence of Purusha is what would we say? People say when you're talking, what is it that's talking? Because there is no personal self that's talking. The talkingness is happening of its own. There is no talker talking. There is no this doing that. The talkingness is complete and spontaneously happening of its own. In a spiritual teacher that's classically in Sanskrit called the Purusha, the knowingness within the self with a capital S, which speaks and is able to express, is to me an aspect of what the Course in Miracles calls the Holy Spirit. In the presence of let's see, the awareness of spiritual truth comes about spontaneously as a knowingness. It doesn't come about as a progression of logical thought. It's a knowingness. You might say as the small self dissolves into the larger self, the larger self, because it is all things, knows all things. So a question then in the mind, like finesses a response, just as the kinesiologic test does. The knowingness is absolute and certain. Therefore, the consciousness, the awareness, and the teaching of a mystic is completely different than a religionist, because the religionist has obtained the information from elsewhere, from an authority somewhere in time. So religion then comes from an authoritative base in which the teacher of religion is not speaking from that which is within the teacher, but what one has heard. Therefore, it's vulnerable. Therefore, it has to be defended. Therefore, it's presented in an authoritarian way. The spiritual reality is absolute. The certainty is absolute, and therefore no authority is necessary, nor is it arguable, nor does it make any difference whether anybody listens or believes it or not. It's completely inconsequential. So one is in a different position than religion, in which authority has to be cited, and you need a whole ecclesiastic structure with titles to warrant the authority. But the authority does not come from within. However, there are certainly excellent teachers who have not experienced the truth which they're teaching, but they are excellent teachers of that which they have heard about. So long as they quote the source of the teaching, they're authentic and they're integrous. If the source of what one is teaching is a certain doctrine and one quotes that as the doctrine, then that's integrous, because that is the source of your teaching, and it may or may not be integrous. I mean, it may or may not be accurate. You don't know. You have to test it with kinesiology to see if it's actually to confirm whether it's true. Within the spiritual experience of the absolute, there's no need to test anything, because it is glaringly the reality of one's existence and of that all around you. So every question then answers itself. It doesn't have to be defended, so it's not arguable. No one has to defend any doctrine, because there is no doctrine. There's only that which is absolutely glaringly obvious. That which is absolutely glaringly obvious only needs acknowledgement of that which it is, you know what I'm saying? Anything else? We got off into a serious vein here. Those questions are just too serious. Begin to sound like some kind of a, what?
Yeah, if we are just witnessing and everything is happening on its own,
Yes.
what is the function of decision and spiritual will making a decision? Is that just the right time came? Or?
We said that the karma is set by spiritual intention and commitment. Everything that happens in the universe then is set by that which it is. And when you affirm or make a certain decision, then you've changed charge on your little particle. And your fate in the universe will be different because you just changed the particle. When you come out of the pit of, we're in the pit of hell, whose agony is beyond any description. There's no verbal description of hell that comes anywhere near it. Although Dante was pretty close. But in the absolute pits of hell, when a voice comes up and says, if there is a God, I ask him to help me, that changed the polarity of that particle. Instantly, that particle. And the infinite magnetic power of God pulled that particle right into the space of infinite splendor, and the ego died. And 1/10 of a second before that, the entity was in hell. You say, how could an entity that's in the pits of hell, despair and agony and black total despair, which went on forever, then access a space that is indescribably magnificent? Because, first of all, there is no reality to temporality. So what seems to be sequential was only a perceptual sequence. It didn't happen in reality. But that was the seeming sequence. So to commit then from I am all there is no God, to I ask a God to help me, is surrendering one's will. And as Ramana Maharshi says, there's two ways to get to enlightenment. One is to ask, who am I? And the other is to completely, totally surrender one's ego to God, one's will to God. So that was the instant of surrendering the will to God at that instant. There was certainly no thought that the self was divinity immanent. It seemed like a very comical joke in hell. Very comical. Yeah.
Can you give an example of the spiritual intention and how to go about having one?
Yes. All right, let's say if you grew up in the Midwest in the 30s like I did, or the 20s, if you hit your thumb with a hammer, my father would say, God damn it, like that. My grandfather would also do that. All my grandfathers did that. It was a male thing. Women didn't do that. They said, my gracious. My grandmother cut her thumb when she was baking. Oh, my gracious me, she'd say. Goodness to heavens. Well, my grandfathers would curse up a blue storm. Oh, damn, that's I had one grandfather, when he got mad, he would build up a mad. He'd go a long time, and then he'd get mad, and he'd sit down there next to his plants. God damn it, Mary, he'd say, my grandma's name. God damn it, Mary, this, that, and he would just curse a blue streak, and it would just go on, you know. And she'd say, Frank, the children. Frank, the children. Yeah. And I was about this big, you know, and then my ears like pitchers. I'm listening to it. Yeah, it was turning blue. I mean, I wouldn't want to get near my grandfather. He was mad, I'll tell you. He was something. Well, that impresses the psyche of the boy who identifies with the father figure. Later on in life, you hit your thumb with a hammer and you find yourself saying the same thing. Well, to use the name of God in vain is a violation of, isn't that one of the 12 something or others? Oh, 12 commandments, yeah. You're not supposed to do that anyway. All right, so it's like an instant reflex. It's an expletive, you see. You're not really blaspheming in the way that blaspheme is meant. Blasphemy is a conscious decision to will that or think that or say that. Now, this is sort of a dumb reflex, but anyway, it brings up guilt every time it happens. You know, I'd have to go to confession, high Episcopal, every Saturday afternoon. You got to go to confession, just like Catholicism, and tell the Father, I have sinned. What have you sinned, my boy? I've used the name of the Lord in vain. Oh, geez, 12 Hail Marys, 6 rosaries. Everybody else is playing ball. You got to go back there and do these 12 rosaries or something. So, anyway, eventually, your intention is to stop doing that. All right, so your intention is, it's happening really against your spiritual will. Your spiritual will is not to do that, see? All right, so you work on it and you work on it, and sometimes it takes years and years to get off that spontaneous expletive because it is programmed so quickly and intensely when you're at an impressionable age, and it's part of your whole identification with macho maleness and the father figures and all that. So the whole society goes with that identification. It's like smoking in World War II. I mean, to not smoke, you must be a wimp or really weird, you know? And it's hard to get over it because it's an identification with the whole generation, a whole ambiance, the whole lifestyle of World War II, the bonding of men to men, and you know, a guy gets his leg shot off, and as they bring him off, you know, and put him on the deck, he says, "Christ, you got a cigarette." That's literally what the guy was. Anybody got a Camel? Oh, God. Leg gone and he wants a cigarette. I don't know, it gave him the great relief. Why? Because he bonded with the courage of all of men everywhere who suffered, that's all. You know, and I was going through that surgery. I've had other major surgeries which were totally painless, but this one was agonizing, the one in which I remember goring that poor son of a gun in the groin. And I identified with all the men on the battlefield in the Civil War. I pictured all the men laying there with their limbs torn off and without any narcotics. They're going through surgery, getting their legs sawed off by the surgeon. I said, if they can do it, I can do it. Huh? So we gained great strength then. And my wife said when she went through childbirth, she thought of all the women through all of time that have done this, and therefore it's possible, and if it's possible, it gave her the courage to do it. So we get that courage and that conviction from our identifications, and that comes out of our intention, that comes out of our attention to transcend our fear of pain and our capacity to experience out anything even without anesthesia. And you come out of it with a new knowingness that you're capable of almost anything if you decide to do it, resolution. So spiritual decision then is different. The spiritual decision is how you set the compass in the ship, you know, and I was on a minesweeper, and I was at the wheel because I was a bosun's mate. So 3 degrees to starboard, 3 degrees to starboard. So you set it 3 degrees to starboard. But the ship is not always going to stay there. The prow is going up and down, and she yaws, and she heaves. But you keep bringing her back to 3 degrees off, you know. And so your intention is to bring her back on course. It doesn't mean that you've gone off. Every wave didn't put you off course, so there's no point in excessive spiritual guilt and attacking yourself every time you use an expletive when you hit your thumb, because that's not your intention. So your intention is what gets you to where you're going, and 1 degree off course makes a big difference. 1 degree off course, and after a couple weeks at sea, you're going to end up in a different continent. Not only are you going to miss the port, but you're going to miss the whole island. So, see, we sit on the calibrated levels of consciousness because they're logarithmic. These are logarithmic numbers. 1 degree, 1 point makes a big difference. One little change of spiritual intention makes a big difference. See? I got it right this time. Wow, that's fantastic. See, this is a logarithm. So the difference between log 200 and log 202 or 203 is very considerable, because you're not talking arithmetic. You're talking about 10 to the 200th power. 2 points up would be 10 to the 202nd power. That's a lot of space, a lot of difference. So even a minor decision, like I want to give up using the name of the Lord in vain, huh? So I think the Lord is sensitive. I'm going to get all upset by that? No. I consider the God invincible, without positionality, without partiality. Certainly not sensitive, vain, or anything else. For the good of the believer, one. It's for the good of the spiritual aspirant to revere divinity, and therefore to use the name of divinity in vain diminishes one's own spiritual integrity. That's why it's not good. The naive person coming from ego translates it that God's going to be offended and mad about that. I mean, why would, the infinite presence is like the sky. It's like infinite space. Would the sky take offense at a cloud? I mean, the sky is unaffected by the cloud. Yes. The infinite divinity of God is beyond man's comprehension, and he keeps imagining that God is some kind of a super person with a huge ego, a divine ego, sensitive, paranoid, insecure, prone to rages and partiality. Also, this God of ancient times has favored geography and real estate, and favors people who live in this real estate or not that real estate, or promises them if they do this or that, this is your real estate. Now, can you tell me what an infinite divinity, the infinite context out of which the whole universe arises, would have any special favoritism as to who gets what real estate? You know? So God's not in the real estate business. He's not sensitive. He's not paranoid. Does not have a depressed serotonin level in his brain. Even though that's a reality, there's nothing wrong with reverence for that which plays in our life as God, which, even if it is not identical with the reality of God, as Krishna says, that the earned virtue is all the same, even those who are devout in their pursuit of demigods or gods of, let's say, higher astral realms, but not the infinite supreme, because of their devotion and surrender to me, will be equally loved and favored. You know, the Bhagavad Gita is calibrates at 900 and something, so it's worth paying attention to. It's one of the highest spiritual ratings available. The Bhagavad Gita is over 950, I think, something like that. That was all a question about the Holy Spirit. Huh? All right. So we'll take a break, and then we'll finish up with any other questions, and we'll talk to people individually that may have wanted to say hello or have a question.
Ask your question.